Today, I'm going to talk to you guys about the top struggles that I found starting my window cleaning business and the solutions that I found for each one of them. Yeah, I'm Ben from Blue Ladder, and I've started 3 window cleaning companies. This is my third one. The first one fizzled out. The second one, I was able to sell to a couple employees. And now the third one, I'm trying to scale it to a little bit higher heights. We'll see what happens. But today, I'm passing out some door hangers and have a few minutes to chat with you while I go. And the first thing that I didn't realize was that it can be a struggle to get customers. And there's all kinds of things that we can do. Put out door hangers, for instance, find people through social media, put a Google profile up there. But even when you figure something out, it's never guaranteed. Things come up, things change, trends change. And so even when you think you have it figured out, you don't have it figured out for very long. I remember when I first launched in California, I actually used a program called Living Social. It's kind of like a Groupon thing, a coupon thing, where you buy a voucher for a certain allotment of services or goods, and it's usually at a discounted price. So anyways, it worked for a little while. It got me a lot of customers really fast, but then those opportunities kind of fizzle out. I eventually moved to a new location, tried to do the same thing again, and it just didn't really take traction like it did in the first place. Now, Living Social got bought out by somebody else. Amazon tried to do their own thing. Groupon still is around, but nowhere near as successful as what it used to be. And so that's kind of it can still work. You could try it, but there's no guarantees and you have to make sure you're doing it right. Then I went to New York and I did a lot of direct mail. Actually, I did one big campaign and it really got me going. Postcards were fantastic. And now in Texas, I do postcards still, but it doesn't work like it used to for me. Not in this place. Maybe it's because there's more competition. Maybe it's just different demographic. And so all that to be said, find ways to market, but be willing to experiment because you never know when the lever that you have is going to break. What you've been doing that's been successful may not always be successful. Hopefully it is. Hopefully you don't have to do a whole lot of changes, but you always have to refine. You always want to make things better. As they say, if it's not growing, it's dying. And the way that life is, humanity as a whole, trends change and people change and what works changes too. The second thing is pricing. And when you first get started, you kind of have no clue. You're just trying to do something that works and get paid for it. You're happy just to make a little bit more than you did at your day job. Now, I figured out pretty quickly that just because it's better than my day job doesn't mean you have to pay your taxes, but you got supplies that come in, vehicle stuff. If your equipment breaks down, you need to be able to replace it. And so you need to have enough of a margin there, a little bit extra profit, so that you can keep money for the things that you need in order to just sustain your business, let alone to grow it, to invest in marketing and do things to get more customers. It's not free. And once you do figure out pricing, you always have to adjust. You kind of try to do a survey of the land, figure out what other people are charging, but make sure that's enough because maybe your margins are different. Maybe somebody else is, just doing it for side cash and they don't actually need the money. Maybe they're just doing it as a hobby and hopefully that's not you. But if it is you, then good for you. I like to get paid for what I do and I like it to be something that's sustainable so that I can grow. And so I have to charge accordingly. Side note on pricing, when people are paying a premium price for it, yeah, you got to give them the value. But typically they understand that if they pay a higher price, then you're more likely to be more reliable because you're going to keep coming back for that higher price. And the people who are the bottom feeders who charge the least amount, most consumers understand that they don't stay in business for long. High school kids can go around, knock on doors, but next summer they're going to be somewhere else. They're going to go to college or they're going to move on with their life. So the cheap price service providers, a good consumer will understand that they're not going to stick around. So if you have to pay a little bit extra for somebody, the chances of them being around and understanding their house and being able to not have to look around for another window cleaner every year, they can usually understand that and see that. So oftentimes you get calls and be like, well, the last guy did it for cheaper. And you're asking them the question, well, what happened to that last guy? Because why don't you keep using him? And usually it's, well, I can't get a hold of him anymore. And so it's either, they raised their price so much that they felt embarrassed and didn't want to call him back, or they just simply went out of business. They're not doing it anymore. They weren't charging enough to make it worth their while and had to pivot and do something different. So, but with that, the last thing about pricing is you kind of got to keep changing that too. Inflation, right? 30% increase in the cost of goods over the past 5 years. And so if you're still operating at the same price 5 years from now, you're losing money, for real. You always want to make sure that you're more of the front leader with prices than you are the straggler or the lag leader. If somebody's cheaper than you, then the chances of them going out of business before you are higher. And so, you have to be careful. You can't be too aggressive. I'm in Texas. I'm in a very competitive market. And so in general, if I charge what I would in a location where they're more seasonal, like say you go up to the Midwest, somewhere like Minnesota or Michigan where, they can't work in the winter, not doing windows. It's like the more seasonal it is, the more difficult it can be to sustain the business. And the more difficult it is, the less competition can survive. And when that's the case, you can charge a little higher premium for the service. But if you go to a market like, say, when I was in San Diego, California, or, Southern California as a whole, really, but now in Texas, really anywhere that they have really good weather and makes the work that much more enjoyable. More people want to do it. It's easier to sustain in the slow times because it doesn't shut down completely. Well, typically that's going to make a market that's more competitive for prices. And so you have to work really hard to show your value, to stick out from the competitors around you. And so that becomes the next difficulty that I didn't expect, finding a way to stick out. I've heard a lot of people talk over the years about how you have to show your value or you have to talk about the things that set you apart. Why do people do business with you instead of your competition? And that can be a difficult thing to figure out, especially if you're starting out. And so rule number one, just start looking online at your competition and look at their bad reviews. Find out why people complain and find out what their issues are. Why, are they not coming on time? Are they having to reschedule? Are they not able to fit them in on a short enough notice? Like, these are all little things. Do they talk about them being slobs or leaving things behind? Like, these are all little details that, unfortunately, showing up shouldn't be that difficult, but showing up sets you apart from a lot of competition. There's just little things here and there that you can do to perfect the customer experience. It's all about them, their perception. You show up on time, you have a uniform, you look good, your truck looks nice. It doesn't have to be perfect or brand new, but it looks clean and it looks presentable. Do you wear boot covers before you go inside their house? Do you make sure that they're satisfied with everything? Do you follow up with emails or phone calls or text messages to make sure that everything's working out right? Do you have that a little attention to detail that goes a little bit beyond what they expect? If you can one up their expectation, then you win every time. So with that being said, one of the marketing rules is when it comes to managing expectations is undersell and overdeliver. Now, you heard people maybe in the past, one guy in particular, Grant Cardone, has said, oversell and overdeliver, but that's not exactly working out well for him right now. He oversold a lot of people and he underdelivered to a lot of them, and they're not very happy. So if you want to have happy customers, make sure you're able to set an expectation that's reasonable, where there's a little bit of wiggle room to one up that expectation. And there's a lot of ways to do that. And that's one of the things that sets you. You find the weak points of your competition, the things that people are complaining about, and then you highlight those as one of your strengths. And then make sure that everything that people praise them about, all their 5-star reviews, whatever they talk about good, make sure you're doing that too. If you can maintain both those things at the same time, you're going to have an intrinsic value in the eyes of the customer, where their perception, the perceived value, is just that you're better because of you do everything else that the other company does, but you also do a little bit more. So that could be, like a hotel putting breath mints on a pillow or offering a free continental breakfast. All these little things, but once it becomes what everybody does, it's not special anymore. You kind of better do it most of the time, unless it's kind of stupid. Like, who really wants a mint on the pillow? If you go to a hotel and they don't have one, you might not care anymore. But then if you go to a hotel where they have, like a homemade pot roast that they're feeding all their guests for dinner every evening, that might look a little bit special. It might set you apart. So just look for little, even if it's quirky, things that kind of match with your brand language and kind of your values. Do those little things that can make a bigger difference. Like, if you bring doggy treats and your company's name is Buddy's Window Cleaning with a little mascot of a puppy, and you make sure you bring like some vegan or some special, I don't know what they would want, but some special type of treat for puppies, and you make that kind of part of your calling card, because you're our buddy and so are your little ones. Like, if you're doing poop scooping, especially, like, right? So there's all kinds of little things that you can do that set you apart, and finding those can be challenging, but I'm hopeful that maybe this sets a little bit of the framework. For me, as Blue Ladder, Next Level Clean, I try to find things to take the service to the next level. So I'm always looking for one thing that I can do extra that they didn't ask me for, didn't anticipate, that I can point out later. Oh, hey, I went ahead and I got your windowsill up next to the attic. I went ahead and saw, you find a little thing and you tell them you're not charging for them. You just are doing a little extra. Just, hey, I saw this thing and I wanted to take care of it for you. You find those weak points, or those pain points rather, and you just kind of hone in on them. I got to be a little predatory like that, like find that little prey, that innocent little problem, and just dial in and attack. If you can get consistent with something and then intertwine that into some of your marketing, well, you're going to win. Another thing you can do is, most window are open to the idea of doing alternative services, whether it's pressure washing or screen repair. You go on and on with the things you could do, gutter cleaning. But if you can offer them a greater kind of spectrum of services, where it's like you're the one-stop shop for exterior cleaning. If you need anything cleaned outside, you call us. Well, you might lead with window cleaning. You could be just called nothing but windows, but you still do other things. But in their mind, they're going to remember, oh, nothing but windows, but they do other things still. And it kind of catches. It's kind of funny. And so they'll remember that. And then when they need everything else done, they know they call you. And it makes it easy because they don't have to remember 5 different companies. They remember one company that does 5 things. Now, obviously, you got to make sure you're doing a good quality on each of those 5 things. And ideally, you'll be able to charge each extra upsell or every cross-sell, every additional service you do. You're going to want to hone in on the hourly wages of that. Make sure that you're earning more dollars per hour with those upsells than you are with your core service. Because why upsell something that's going to steal the upside of the revenue on a job? Never do an add-on service that's basically going to cost you. Like if you could do window cleaning for $100 an hour, don't do anything for less than $100 an hour, no matter what it is. If they ask you to clean their blinds and you do the calculation and the market value is like $5 to do some blinds, but to do a bunch of blinds, it's going to be like an $80 an hour task. Well, either charge more than the market value or don't do it. Like only do things that make sense money-wise, profit-wise. Okay, another major pain point that I found was people canceling or rescheduling and how to pivot with that, especially with the rain, right? Places where they don't get a lot of rain, especially like where I'm at now in Texas, but it was bad in California as well. When it did rain, everybody was afraid that the sky was falling, right? You'd get called a week in advance when you still don't know what's going to happen. It might rain, and people are calling saying, hey, it looks like we're going to have weather next week. We want to reschedule to the week after. And it just doesn't work, right? I mean, if they're calling ahead of time and there's plenty of time to fill something else in, then sometimes I'll be flexible with that, especially if I'm really busy and somebody else wants to get on that point, then I'll be flexible. But typically, you got to learn to explain that, like, the rain isn't that bad. And that's why I do a rain guarantee. Some people give me a hard time about my rain guarantee. It's honestly kind of becoming the industry standard to have a rain guarantee, but there's still some guys who are going to be hemming and hawing at it. But I've seen 7-day rain guarantee, 14-day rain guarantee, and everything in between. But the idea is that if somebody doesn't reschedule the appointment, they hold to it, even if there's rain on the schedule. Maybe there's going to be a storm the next day, or maybe it might be raining lightly during the process. But you let them know, look, we're going to clean your windows. If you let us stick with the schedule, it makes it a lot easier to just come back and touch up the windows for free. It's a lot faster. We can use a water-fed pole. We just rinse it off, and it takes 15 minutes for a whole house if we need to do it. And usually it's just one side. If it's a really bad type of rain where it's rains cats and dogs and fish fall onto your windows, and make a joke like that. It makes it fun for them. They like you more after you do it, and they're more likely to do business with you if you can make a joke. But you let them know, hey, we can come back and touch up a lot easier than rescheduling the entire appointment. And if you do reschedule, well, we're all booked up the following week. So you're going to have to wait even longer, and we're going to lose out on the revenue that we could get. Let's just build in a little pocket. We can swing by on a day between jobs, and it'd be really easy if we need to touch it up. Now, obviously, you don't have to, but that helps to prevent a lot of reschedules because of rain. In addition, some people will cancel, right? They find somebody else, a high school kid comes and knocks on their doors, and they figure, okay, I'm going to cancel the appointment because this other company just came and they're going to do it right now. That could happen. It doesn't happen often, but it's happened to me once or twice over the course of 10 years. Other people, something comes up, emergencies happen, right? Somebody has a fall, or their mother-in-law is in the hospital, or something happens and they can't continue with the appointment. And so it's good to have kind of a list of different homeowners or, clients who want something to be cleaned. Maybe they're scheduled in the future, but they're in a rush. Maybe they don't have to be there. It's especially nice with things like gutter cleaning or just outside window cleaning when they don't have to be home, because then you can schedule them whenever it works for you. And so somebody cancels, you have a little gap, maybe it's last minute. You reach out to those people who are on your short list of, it's kind of like the wait list. And whether you just create a little notepad or you have a whiteboard where you have the addresses for that you are going to be cleaning anyways, but you can bump them forward. Maybe they've already asked if they could be bumped forward, but you can always do it on the phone call. You just say, hey, if we have anything come up sooner, we'll let you know. And so having that little kind of like a hot list of work that you can do on a moment's notice is very nice, very handy to have. So I haven't been able to always maintain that list all season long, but when I do have a few people, It's really nice to be able to just be like, hey, look, we just had somebody cancel. We've got a 3-hour gap here. We can come out today if you're willing. And if they're pensive about it and I don't have a lot of other options, then I'll even offer them a little discount for working with me. So I think you get the idea there. You just adapt and find ways to fill those little pockets and hopefully prevent cancellations. With that said, one other thing with the cancellations is you can require a deposit. And I know a lot of people has worked well for them. They'll require like a 10% deposit or a $50 deposit that's a flat rate. And if they cancel or reschedule, well, you keep the deposit. And then if you have employees someday, or even if you are already having employees, you're able to kind of cover some of that, the opportunity cost, the stuff you could have made. Well, at least you'll have the ability to pay your employees their wages and not worry about the bills as much. Sometimes you could hypothetically get some pushback with that. Today, it's more so acceptable. Most customers are surprised if you don't, honestly. So it's something I haven't done yet just because the call service I use, they just started taking credit card over the phone. So I might start implementing something, but it's actually also helpful in case of scammers. Some people will try to book an appointment and then they tell you they can't be there, but can they pay you via cashier's check or something? And they go through this whole rigmarole. And eventually I went to a job, did the work once, and then they told me, oh, but I can't pay by credit card. I need to pay you a cashier's check. Can I pay you double so that I can pay somebody else something? It was just silly. So I was out about an hour and a half of work with 2 guys with me. It turned out to be some scammer from, who knows, India or Bangladesh, I don't know. And those deposits can help with preventing cancellations in more ways than one. So like I said, I don't personally do it, but it's something that works for a lot of companies out there and has saved them some headaches. Now, the last thing for this video about things I didn't anticipate, problems that I didn't know I would have, is seasonality. Every market has its own seasons. So it's important to start tracking your monthly revenue from the very beginning. And then you can kind of forecast your growth. But more importantly, you see like a rise and a fall, kind of ebbs and flows of busy seasons. So spring is typically busy. Fall is typically busy. Summer slows down. Winter slows down, sometimes to a dead spot, depending on your market. And so when you're tracking those, you can kind of anticipate when things are going to slow down. So then when you get really busy, you can offer them a discount if they book during your slow time. So for out here, peak spring, somebody's wanting to book an appointment, but they say it's too expensive. Well, I'll give them a $50 off if they book in July when I know it's going to be slow. You can find little ways. And then on top of that, you can prepare by just saving, right? If you know you're going to need to pay the bills for February and March, and you might not have any money coming through because there might be snow on the ground and people just don't want their windows cleaned, well, you can start saving for that. Build up the savings so that you can pay yourself when it gets slow. And so if you look at it, your revenue anticipated for the year, if you're going to get $100,000 for the year, then you break it down to 12 months. You pay yourself 12 months the same price. You just give yourself, shave some off the top and continue paying yourself the same amount when the winter time. You just build up a little bit of a nest egg. And so you have enough extra to pay your bills when things get slow. So I don't know, that's some of the biggest things that I've run into. Let me know what kind of your problems are and comment below. See you guys in the next video.